to speak spiritualism with your family and friends and other folks, then this is the show for you. Welcome to Wednesdays with Willa. I am your host, Willa White, and this is my weekly podcast show that airs on Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern on my Facebook page, Willa White Medium. It's an opportunity for us to discuss wonderful topics relating to spiritualism, mediumship, healing, faith, family, or more. And I typically have a special guest on the show, and we cover a topic beautifully. And today we have with us Ron Skowronski. Hello, Ron.
Good to see you.
Great.
Good to see you all.
Ron is definitely a favorite here in Lilydale. He's an ordained spiritualist minister, and also you're ordained in other ones as well. But
legally, I'm ordained with Centers for Spiritual Living. I'm with the which what used to be called the United Church of Religious Science, and that's but by virtue of being spiritually fluid, I am associated with anyone who will have me. No, many different faith traditions that are akin to our liberal, open-hearted and open-minded points of view, and have enjoyed that for many years, and hopefully will continue to do that for many more.
I know people really call on you to minister to them, and it's been wonderful over the years, so many of the hearts of people that you have helped to heal. So I just wanted to say that to Ron, because
thank you. That's very kind of you.
He really, I hear from other people, oh, that Ron, he's just so wonderful, and he's funny too. It's like you have the best of all the combos on that.
You know my motto: if you can't laugh, stay in bed.
There you go. And I will say this, that you can look back at the archive videos of Wednesdays with Willa. Ron has been a guest on the show before.
Yep.
And one of, I think, our favorite ones was Missing Them at Christmas.
Yeah.
Which would be a great one for this time of year to go back and review. If there's someone else that you know that's in need right now and really missing their people who have passed, that is a great show. Ron did a fantastic job with that topic. And he's been on to talk about many other things related to spiritualism. And I loved our show on Florence Scovel Shin.
Oh my gosh, I remember that.
Yeah, we talked about the new thought.
Great metaphysician, great part of the New Thought movement, and strongly, as I did then, encourage people to get to know Florence, because she's extraordinarily profound, but simultaneously very down to earth. You don't have to be a, quote, metaphysician to not only appreciate but learn so much wisdom from Florence.
That's right. And she wrote books like Your Word is Your Wand.
Yep.
And usually you can get the compilation of her books all in one.
Yeah, that's the beautiful part. And then you can, and you can purchase it on Amazon.com. I don't make any money on that.
If only we monetize that one, right?
Yeah.
But yes, go back and look at the archive videos of shows I've done with Ron in the past, as well as all the great guests, because this is year 7 of Wednesdays with Willa. So that means there are a lot of videos that you can go back and enjoy to your heart's content. If you go to my Facebook page, Willa White Medium, or to my YouTube channel, you can access things there. Just type in Ron Skowronski's name and on my channel.
If you can spell it.
Yeah, good luck with that one. Although I do have it in the post
I know, I'm kidding.
for people who need the spelling of it. But yes, this is going to be a great show. And I know many people, it's a difficult thing when you're wanting to talk about spiritualism to other people. And, you know, when you're first starting out, and even if you've been in it for years, decades sometimes, you don't always find the right words. You want to convey intelligently the beliefs of spiritualism, the philosophy and understandings, so that you can have a good conversation with someone. And we're going to hit on some of those important points today.
Yep.
Excellent. So, yeah, here we go. How to speak spiritualism 101.
Yeah, really.
What would you like to start with?
Well, I think it's important to kind of set a little bit of what I call the ground rules. And what I mean by that is, all too often, and we see it in especially the current, I'll say, culture of the American landscape, we have a lot of difficulty in communication, horrifying in some instances. And whether that be in our, discussions, if I can use that word very cautiously, about politics,
Which we steer clear of here.
Exactly. So if I don't steer clear, please stop me. No, but seriously,
I have the duct tape at hand.
She has the duct tape in the back and the hook.
And the Jefferson.
But the other subject that is probably equally, if not more volatile, and probably has been in all of at least recorded history, and I'm sure prior history, is the subject of religion. And I've noticed a lot of times that when people, especially those of us who had a very strong orientation and indoctrination in what I call the faith or the beliefs of our origins, if for whatever reason those faiths don't work anymore for us, they don't answer the important questions. Who am I? What is God? What is my relationship to God? And of course, what is my relationship to the manifestation of God, which is you and me and everybody and everything else? It's very difficult for people to communicate once they learn whether it be one point of view or a variety of different points of view. If they're true seekers, I've always encouraged people that one of the things I very strongly believe, I am probably one of the most, and this is a little bit political, I am the hugest believer in the separation of church and state. To this end, I do not want any specific religious orientation to dominate our educational system. But what I do encourage is the teaching of comparative or comprehensive, maybe in the context of social studies or spiritual principles, spiritual values. Nobody, I would hope, would debate me. We need to develop more of a consciousness of striving to understand where we're coming from, to seek common ground, as opposed to seeking more ways to feel separate and isolated. So what usually happens is people have this tendency of, they find something, whether it be spiritualism or even maybe one of the other faith, any faith tradition, and they get excited, they learn a lot, and maybe this is their answer. Permanent answer, who knows? But at least an answer that helps them gain a foothold in their life and greater guidance on their path. Well, unfortunately, because we don't seem to have, or we have lost even more considerably, the ability to communicate and have dialogue, what we end up having is an argument. I never forget, I asked a friend of mine, how was your Thanksgiving? And she said, "Nah." I said, bad turkey? She said, no, bad relatives. They had had some kind of a religious row over the bird. And I'm like, no, that should never happen. And it reminds me of that great teacher and minister. I've quoted him many times because this is so important to me spiritually. The Reverend Ernst Schoenfeld of Chicago, Illinois, who was a tremendous teacher here at Lilydale for many, many years. And when I was a young minister, probably even before I entered the ministry, I was maybe 19 years old, Ernst would say to me, he says, we have to agree to disagree. I go, well, I agree with that. He says, well, but we have to agree to disagree without becoming disagreeable. And that hit me.
So rule number one.
Rule number one, we have to respect any and all beliefs, no matter how cockamamie we perceive them to be in our own consciousness. If someone comes up to you and says, I believe that, you can pick any, I really don't want to necessarily, I can go down a laundry list of examples, but any belief. In fact, let's deal with our belief. We teach in the spiritualist tradition that the communication between this world and the next world is a fact. It's a reality scientifically proven by the phenomenon of spiritualism. Well, guess what? There are legions of people out there who will tell you that that is hogwash. And how it amazes me how many times I'll watch a television program and they'll be doing some kind of an interview about something, and to make a really strong point, he says, about somebody who's passed away. Well, nobody's ever come back and told us what it's like over there. Really? You don't read? You have no idea of the literature, ancient and contemporary? Evidently not. So the important thing is to recognize that mutual respect is extremely important, and recognizing that, and not only their belief may be something that is you have given up. In other words, it no longer serves you, but you have to also understand that it is still serving them, and for you to, in a sense, challenge that and say, nah, I don't think so. That sounds like, yuck. And is basically like saying, you know what? You're yuck. We are
That's the way people take it, yeah.
Yeah, we are our belief systems. Yeah. We are what we believe, because our belief becomes our faith becomes our activity. It becomes how we function in this world. I am a huge devotee of the late Bishop John Shelby Spong, who was an Episcopal bishop of, I believe, Newark, New Jersey for 25 years. And he wrote an amazing series of books. And his first book, catchy little title, Why Christianity Must Change or Die. Very powerful. He's it's hard not to say attacking, but he is confronting many of the traditional beliefs of what is called theism, the idea of God as anthropomorphic, separate and distinct from humanity. That's as far as I want to go with that, because I'll start preaching.
Hold it back.
Hold it back. But the thing about what he said was that we have two things that confront us in our lives. First is what is called existential angst. Afraid to be alive. What is all this? Oh my gosh. We are becoming sentient. We are becoming conscious, let's say. And then the other piece is finitude. We confront the fact that we die. We cease. And so this issue of, is there something beyond? Could there be the theologies and the philosophies and the belief systems that have grown around that are myriad. And here's this little bunch of people in 1848 who come along and say, excuse me, but we think we have the answer here. And this thing correlates with ancient senior moment, ancient scriptures and so forth, and also is proceeded on for a long period of time. So there is this, and yet we still have incredible numbers of people, and that's where I think we make a mistake in the understanding of spiritualism, is the idea that, well, if they don't know it, they don't know it. If they don't know it by now, they'll never know it. That's not an attitude I want to take, because if I run into someone, you'd mentioned that I work with a lot of people. Most of my work tends to be nowadays grief related, not mediumship per se, but counseling in the I'll call it the articles of this faith tradition, the declaration of principles, and explain to people what they mean, even on their deathbed, if you will, so that they will have what we have always proclaimed, a more noble view of the all that is, the ground of being, God, if you will, that they may have a more noble view of their relationship to that all-inclusive all that is, and that as they are confronting their finitude, the finality of this so-called three-dimensional experience, this expression, that there is infinitely more ahead. But what's difficult with that is that you're constantly, as I alluded to earlier, butting heads with people because there are so many different perceptions. And unfortunately, perceptions are what people, I'll just call them their beliefs. And they are sometimes calcified to the point where even they don't really believe them anymore, but it's all they've got.
The ritual of that, the routine of it has been complete.
Well, Mom, there's it's an old joke, and if I offend anybody, I don't care. No, I care deeply. I'm just kidding. But there's an old thing we learned in Sunday school. Jesus loves me, this I know, 'cause the Bible tells me so. It's a beautiful little kind of a rhyme that we teach children. Well, the joke used to be, Jesus loves me, this I know, 'cause my mommy told me so. We absorb those beliefs, those ideas, and there's nothing wrong with that until they become, as unfortunately as is occurring in our culture today and actually has over history, when those ideas become not comforting, guiding, and uplifting, but they become weaponized. And then you get things like burning people at the stake, you get stoning people, you get it's what I call the dichotomy of religion. God is love, except when he's not, or except when it's not. So, if I may, draw it back to, especially during this time of year, what's called the holy season, I have no problem with having wonderful faith discussions with my Judaic friends who are just finished celebrating Hanukkah. We are now entering, in a very short time, Christmas. A short time after that, Kwanzaa. And forgive me, but there's at least I think the statistic I read, between the 1st of November and the 1st of January, something like 15 or 20 unique and different holidays from many different traditions. And I hear people at times talk about maybe 40 or 50 years ago, what they used to call the good old days, where people would agree to disagree. They would not make their belief system an opportunity for a fight to be proven correct. Because in actuality, if we really want to know the truth and are willing to admit it, I go with the Hindu concept, God is the great unknowable. In our humanity, we are speculating. We have strong ideas. We have subjective revelation. Mm-hmm. Some people claim objective revelation.
And so this is an important point about the rule of not getting into it with people from that standpoint. And I would say as well, during that time when you're wanting to share about spiritualism, there you can seek the similarities that other religions have, and also I think that introduce them to some of the terminology that we use and why that would be different.
I used to get it's an excellent point. I used to get a kick out of when I would encourage people to read it's basically I'll call it Bible. It's called The Science of Mind by Dr. Ernest Holmes. I would show them the book. I'd say, this is what we, from A to Z, what our belief system is about. I said, but I don't want you to read it. I do not want you to read it. I will then give them another book like this thing called You, this thing called Mind. Again, Holmes works. Because in the back of the textbook is a glossary. And it's a glossary of terms. They're metaphysical terms. Terms like being, consciousness, etc., etc., etc. And when you have to learn a new language, it's very frustrating because you're juxtapositioning it against the language you were taught. And most religious tradition is taken, in at least in the ones that I'm reasonably familiar with, is taken as literal or objective, so-called objective revelation. where so much of what we do is subjective. And yet, pardon me, when it is brought forth in such a way that, and again, excellent point, the terminology we use, finding common ground,
yes,
making it I usually tell people, I don't make my religious discussions any more volatile than I do when I'm sharing with you my mother's recipe for chicken soup.
And I think the big point of this is I don't try to convert anyone.
Thank you.
I have no desire to be one of those people that convert someone into that. That's something people have to come to in their own time. And all you could do is plant a seed with them. Yeah. One of the books I found that is so beautiful is Becoming a Spiritualist by H. Gordon Burroughs. Yeah. And, it really covers some of the important ground about becoming a spiritualist and what's involved with those kinds of things. So if it's a book that you don't have on your shelf, that might be one that you want to take. It is
excellent. And then if you want to gain a deeper vocabulary in metaphysics, which of course is I think the next step in understanding a larger interpretation of the word consciousness, you read things like In Tune with the Infinite by Trine. I think the author's last name is Trine.
Well, when we say these books, these aren't necessarily things that you then go hand off to your loved one, to your friends, to your family.
We don't pass
literature. In terms of having a discussion with someone, I think the biggest part I've noticed is that you reassure them that you believe in God.
Yeah, because...
number one, we believe in God. We believe that God is all there is.
Yeah. And of course, then you're going to get, if they've had any theological or philosophical training, you're nothing but a bunch of pantheists or animists. And yet what we're beginning to see, Father Richard Rohr, excellent Catholic theologian and priest, is using a lot of the terminology that was used way back, when people are beginning to open themselves. We have, I don't want to say a leg up, but we have a little bit of an edge in what's happening in the world today, because we're understanding that humanity is on the cusp of some major shifts. It's palpable. Mm-hmm. And there's shifts, whatever you believe about, I have friends who believe in the end times. I have friends who believe in aliens are going to come back and take us home, not without a good lunch first. But all that kind of stuff, and that's fine. Believe what you choose to believe, but you have to be comfortable with when you, not just with your own belief system, but to express it in such a way where, like you just said, perfect way of saying it. I'm not interested in converting you. I can't tell you how many people are shocked. I mean, like jaw drop shocked. You don't want me to join your church? Nope. You don't want me to believe like you do? Not particularly. I want you to find what works for you. I like over here in Lilydale at the Church of the Living Spirit, they always in their introduction to their Sunday devotional service, they'll say, we support the God of your understanding. And what's problematic with a lot of people say, well, you have to believe in God. Let's take that deeper. What if you don't? What if you are an atheist? What if you are an agnostic? Now, most people won't mess with you too much if you're an agnostic, because that's somebody who doesn't believe but would like to. I'm sure. Obviously that's a very simplistic definition. But when you say, and I have friends, dear friends, people that I've known for many years who are, I'll use the phrase, stone cold atheists. Now, years ago, my God, this was anathema, which is just one step above heresy, by the way. And this is why people were literally killed, shunned, take your pick, because there is an association that says if you don't believe in God, you are somehow the antithesis, you are anti-God or anti-Christ. You've heard the term before. And there is this mind-numbing ugliness that comes out of people, because it's like, if I can't convince them that there is a God, then something's wrong. And usually the gestalt of that is, something must be wrong with me. I have to prove it to justify my experience.
Well, that idea of I must save someone else, I must rescue them from themselves. That's part of that. But let us make it clear, in terms of spiritualism, we believe so strongly in personal responsibility.
Absolutely.
And that that is something that's built into the principles that will help you when you are discussing with people, so that you don't have to come in too fiercely with any of this. Gentle, subtle energy is so much better when you're having these interactions, when you're having these discussions, and not giving them too much information initially. Just be very, very, very gentle, because timing is everything.
Yep.
And some people are not ready for certain kinds of things. And spiritualism is a religion of experience.
Yes.
I want to make this clear to you.
Yes.
You can read all the books.
Yeah.
But it really is something that you have to personally experience before you grasp it. So maybe it's in terms of the spiritual healing, or with mediumship.
Exactly.
And back to the atheist term, when sometimes people come forward in spirit that did not believe in God.
Exactly.
And the client, the recipient, is just like, oh my goodness, like they didn't believe, they've had their comeuppance. So don't worry, it's all going to come out in the wash.
Thank you.
I think that's an important thing, that if you are worried about your people, that the doorway to reformation is never closed. And that's a really important belief system of spiritualists. And the other part of that is that we only need to just love them through those things, and not think that we are necessarily superior to them. No. But it certainly does help us to know what we know, and to believe what we believe, so that we can be a light in the world.
I always tell people, and I always tell people that many times when I've dealt with folks like you've described, I've told them, I used to enjoy listening to Neil Donald Walsh, who wrote Conversations with God. He has a pet line that he uses after he does a major teaching. He says, I could be wrong. I don't think so, but I could be wrong. And it's this vulnerability that you want to share with people, because the truth is, you could be wrong. Okay? You could have some misinformation.
I would say that it's about wrong about other people. If it's you're not wrong about your own personal experiences.
No.
If you've had experiences with your loved ones in spirit that have come around you, that is absolutely truth for you.
Yeah, it has to be.
Do not dismiss those kinds of things and allow other people to dismiss it. So you may have to pick and choose who you share among the family, among the friends, your spiritual experiences. Not all of them are equipped to deal with the emotions, the intellect, the spiritual energy that's involved with that. So again, pick and choose. It's huge advice I would give.
Concur. I think it says in Scripture, the last great enemy to destroy is the enemy of death. And the way I've always interpreted that is just what you've said. Some people are so terrified of punishment, fear of the unknown, fear of being incorrect and therefore punished, that you have to approach them, as I say with Neil's kind of a light, not necessarily a flippant by any means, but a lighthearted, open-minded point of view, so that you can say, like for example, common ground. I always get a kick out of this. I tell people, I said, well, one of the religions that is the closest to modern spiritualism is Roman Catholicism. And they go, no. I said, yeah. I said, you folks talk to dead people too. Right. They're called saints. I said, I must be honest. I said, I'm a little more impressed with your methodology of vetting them. We don't do that very often, and sometimes it leads to amusing circumstances. But
and talking to angels.
Yes, I personally, as Ron Skowronski, man off the street with 49 years, I don't have a clue about these things people call angels. I call them my spiritual guidance system. I've never seen.
Oh, there's a vibrational frequency difference, I have to say.
No, and I'm more than open to, because I love that, to listen to that. And the other one, of course, my personal favorite, which goes back many generations, is elementals, fairies, gnomes, blah, blah. And people look at you like, fairies? Gnomes?
Cuckoo.
Cuckoo, cuckoo, cuckoo. And I'm like, no. There is more to reality than we have any comprehension of.
Beyond 3D.
Yes, thank you very much. And the issue at hand is we're not trying to prove me correct and them incorrect, or vice versa. There has to be a mutual, as I mentioned in the beginning, a mutual respect so that we can learn from each other's perspectives and still walk away and say, you know, I don't agree with everything you've told me, and you have to be clear, not because I think you're, quote, wrong, but because it's not my personal experience. But I'm open to listen. I'm grateful that we've shared, and then we can go out and have a coffee and a donut together and continue to hopefully stimulate and feed each other. So at the end of the day, we don't have the kind of unfortunate altercations that have caused so much anxiety and trauma and bloodshed in years past, and unfortunately even today, that religion is the cause of. Because this is probably the most sensitive subject you can talk about in mixed company, or even on a one-to-one basis, it's probably the most difficult. I will not ever candy coat that. And as Willa had just pointed out, to approach it in a way is to find that common ground takes, and that's one of the reasons I so excitedly accepted this opportunity to share with people the idea that it doesn't have to be not just a disagreement, but the biggest issue, of course, is mitigating fear, helping to help that person. Because how many times do you see a person come, oh, I wish Uncle Fred could be at his daughter's wedding? You go, why? Is he living in California or something? He can't get. No, he passed away. Oh, okay. I'm so sorry. What makes you believe that he is not there? And you'll usually get a very traditional Orthodox answer. And I said, well, may I share with you my feeling? And that's the word I use, feeling. And I said, and maybe I'm being sentimental. Maybe I'm not correct. I don't know. But this is how I experience it. And to go back to what you said earlier, you've planted the seed. You've planted the seed.
That he would be around. People, when they pass, they don't stop caring about their loved ones here on the earth plane. Not that they're going to be nosy into every little aspect of a person's life. They're not allowed to, but also...
You've never met my mother.
There's voyeurism's not allowed. I'm just telling people who need to know that their loved ones in spirit want to be there for those milestones in their life, to share the joys, to share the struggles, to be part of that still. Think about it. When it's your turn to pass, I know some of you will be like, I'm just going to take a vacation. But some of you are going to be like, I really want to go check in on my children, or on my siblings, or on my friends, or I've even had people in spirit who were scientists.
Yes. Or
were writers or teachers, or whatever was a big part of their occupation in life. They go and support those careers and those objectives still here on the earth plane to inspire and help other people. So that's still going on.
Well,
it's such a beautiful, beautiful thing.
The psychic surgeon Arrigo, what I used to call the surgeon of the rusty knife, had a German medical doctor function through his mediumship to facilitate and assist some amazing things. Harry Edwards from Great Britain, same thing. These are concepts that are not that strange if you can find a midpoint of agreement, like I mentioned about Catholic saints, or there is still an enormous amount of what is commonly called ancestor worship. Mm-hmm. Now, spiritualism obviously doesn't worship an ancestor, and I think that's a very it's a misnomer even in those traditions.
That's an important point, because some of the people that you are talking to may think that's what spiritualism is about. So
that all we do is sit around and commune with the dead for fun and profit, and nothing could be further from the truth. And that's why, again, it astounds me to this day how few, even in the spiritualist movement, have really taken the time to study its history. And I'm speaking its contemporary history from, let's say, again, the beginning, so to speak, 1848 to, let's say, 1920. That is a section of American and world history and so forth that is astounding. And people say, there she is. She was a fraud. Yes, there she was, and she was a fraud. But let me tell you, for every, I go back to Reverend Schoenfeld. In order for there to be a counterfeit, there must have been at least one original. And so we go back and study these other people who had, like the Scottish medium, D.D. Hume, or Home, as he's often called. Yes. Potato. I don't know how to pronounce it.
So if you want to know more about the history of spiritualism, the book is titled History of Spiritualism by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Right.
And if that name sounds familiar, that is because he is the author of the Sherlock Holmes stories. And I did do a show at one point about the history of spiritualism.
Oh, cool.
So type that in if you want to know more about that particular book.
Yeah, because those are the things that will help people. If you can substantiate some of the historical things that have occurred, and to give them some, the backstory, that it's not just watching, a so-called famous medium on TV deliver spirit greetings in the gallery, if you will. Those are wonderful things. They draw people's attention and interest, but it's not. It's the proverbial tip of the iceberg, though it's the most important tip, but of understanding the religious aspects of it, the philosophical, and then ultimately how it can really comfort and encourage and help life progress, not in the world to come, but what is equally important, and that is the here and the now.
And the here and now.
And another thing that comes to me that I think that's become quite important as I've moved along in my path, there are people, a lot of people, more people, and we're probably comfortable admitting sometimes, who have totally given up on religion. You don't want to use the word ground of being. You don't want to use the word God. They just think, and it's not that they're atheists per se. It's just this has become, because life is what it is, it's become so overwhelming. They just said, you know what? None of this works. Have a nice day. I'm going off to the computer.
Literally, people are like that too.
I believe very strongly that the contemporary way to deal with that is what was done here at Lilydale Assembly this past season. We had two of the most astonishing and adroit individuals here. We had Raymond J. Moody, MD, PhD, who coined the phrase near-death experience in 1975. 1975.
76, but maybe it's 75.
Close enough.
We're really close.
Yes. And we had Eben is the gentleman, how it's pronounced, Alexander, MD, PhD, neurosurgeon, who had probably in Dr. Moody's view, as a quotation, I'm paraphrasing, one of the most, if not the most significant contemporary near-death experiences, and those books are available. And the reason I say that is because these experiences proving, at least in a subjective manner, to who is experiencing it, and then giving that out there. These are people who started out as scoffers, empirical scientists. Spiritualism is not an empirical science. You can't turn the phenomena of spiritualism on like hot and cold running water. You cannot guarantee it's going to be A plus B will always equal C. There are too many variables. True. But to the degree that we have been able to, over generations of time, we have used as much of the scientific method and principle as possible, and the body of evidence that is now coming forth as new and improved, and you've never had this kind of information before, is decades old. Yes. Decades old. Yes. And it, frankly, it even predates that, and you go back to whether it's the Judeo-Christian Bible, the Quran, and there are all of these things. And when you have modernity and antiquity in direct collision, some people might view that as, oh my God, what's going to happen to our belief system? What's going to happen to any belief system? You will choose to grow or not. And there are so many people who, if they read that literature, and especially if they've experienced it and recognize that, wait a minute, I didn't believe in God, I didn't believe that I survived death, I didn't this, I didn't that, and all of a sudden I had this experience.
I just had a God experience.
Yeah, exactly.
I know I have a soul now.
Right.
It's exciting. Really.
It's well, not to be glib, but it's life-changing. It's life-affirming. Mm-hmm. And so you can, with somebody who is, quote, religious and wouldn't come into a spiritualist church or even have contact, God forbid, with a spiritualist medium, will then say, wait a minute, this guy's got a PhD, he's a neuroscientist, and he's drawn these same conclusions that these good folks have. I don't think they call us good folks. There's some people who genuinely don't like us.
I don't worry about that, whether they think that at all. Yeah. People meet me and they know I'm good.
Yep.
I meet them, I know they're good. I think the biggest part we have to understand is that we see the good in them. Because when we are seeing their soul, that's how we're going to be able to speak to them in the highest and best way.
Yep.
So that's a big part of this conversation. I think that when you're engaging with that person, that they can see how much you value their energy.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
And I think to your point of there are these other people that have had the experiences that may help other people to value what you are stating more. Right. But I would take us back to nothing trumps personal experience. And
I agree.
Sometimes people have to have a circumstance. Maybe someone in their life passes, and it ignites their soul. All of a sudden they start to feel the relationship with their parent or their spouse or their child or their friend that's coming to them, and
it's inevitable.
And they start to become more aware of that. And somebody says, well, maybe you'd like to go to Lily Dale, or maybe you'd like to have a reading, and it kind of has to sink in a little bit, and then they say yes, and then they have that, and they open up a little more. So it's not about having, sometimes those near-death experiences are like, wham, wide open. Yeah. But sometimes people need to have the incremental.
Oh, no question. Energy. I would never presume to just throw this at a person's feet and say, here, read this, you'll believe. Yeah. It is, as we were talking about earlier, the issue of gentle, open-hearted, open-minded, and recognizing that if the person basically rejects what you're sharing, say, well, I just wanted to share that with you, and it isn't the basis of any reason for the manifestation of any resentment, angst.
Right. And to be able to give it without getting anything back about it.
Yeah. It's kind of a Buddhist or a kind of concept where take nothing personally.
Yes.
Take nothing personally. Because it isn't personal. It is personal to this extent. It's personal for them. And it may need to be at that point. And to your point earlier, if you're in a position, you're not there to convert them, you're not there to correct them, fix them. All you're doing is sharing your heart, your mind with them. Hopefully they will do likewise. But if they don't, that's okay, and life moves on.
Yes. So Ron, when you're wanting to speak spiritualism with someone, we've laid down the wonderful groundwork of the attitude and some of the background that is helpful for you to have just for your own sake of the underpinnings of from the intellect side, but also the experience side. Mm-hmm. Let's say you've gotten to that point and you want to speak spiritualism, and there are certain kinds of words that we would use.
Right.
What are some of those words that we could explain to people about?
I think a lot of times what happens in the beginnings of those kind of conversations is what I talked about, the glossary of terms.
Right.
Though I, in a sense, joke about telling them not to read a book. I mean, of course, I point out you have to become actually familiar for this book to be meaningful to you. And it's the same thing with the terms. People will say, they may have been to a service and they're scratching their head going, what's spirit? Or what do you mean by spirit greeting, or what, so forth and so on. It's not hard for most of us who've been around for, even a little while to say, well, we talk about the concept of spirit with a capital S. Yes. That's what we call the infinite intelligence, the universal consciousness, the all that is.
Now, great I am.
Yeah, the great I am. And frankly, those last few examples I gave might be too much.
Yeah,
it really might be too much, because you're talking about maybe theistic people who think God sits on a throne with a big book, and it's very important. By the way, we can't make this point strong enough. We don't laugh at that perspective. That's their perspective. That's their teaching. That's what is meaningful to them. But it's just a point counterpoint in the context of explanation. Say, well, spirit is what you may call God, and what I used to call God, but I started looking at it because of the information I was gleaning in a little bit of a different way. Soul, what's a soul? Well, soul in its most basic interpretation is the individualization of spirit, you. And some folks are not that particularly biblically orientated, but it says, man was created in the image and likeness of God. So in the context of that totality, you are an expression, an individual of that totality. Mm-hmm. And people say, well, what does that mean? We don't know.
Well, it means that the personality survives
right.
so-called death.
Yeah.
And that your soul persists after you shuffled off the mortal coil.
Yeah.
And so then, we have the big S spirit, we have soul, and then we have the little s spirit.
Right.
Let's talk about little s.
Well, more often than not, sometimes there is some kind of a confusion. I tend to keep it, I think, probably more simplistic. I don't generally, people do usually, it's a synonym that soul is spirit, both small s. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's how most people interpret that. And I think that's so it's a good thing to also bring to their attention, because they will have every so often the words are interchanged.
Right. So spirit with a big S would be spirit's telling me this. That would be the big S. Right. If it's a spirit loved one, then that's lowercase.
Lower. Thank you.
And that's different from a ghost.
Yes.
We don't think in terms of ghosts.
Right. And you could get into, and of course in this day and age with ghost hunters on TV and all these other programs, a lively discussion, ghost, specter, entity. Right. I mean, it goes on and on. Yes. But in this kind of a discussion, which hopefully is born out of a religious, or let's probably use a better word, a spiritual discussion, you probably won't get into the whole idea of specters and yes, you guessed it, poltergeists and because there is a mountain of what I call mechanical information, technical information, that I've even experienced a lot of folks, not necessarily overwhelming, but a lot of folks they're just not interested. They have a very basic, and then and you said that earlier. They want to know, and you see this on these programs with Teresa Caputo and John Edward and so forth. The first question that people ask when they're dealing with that medium is my loved one okay?
Yes.
Are they happy?
Yes.
You know, they weren't real nice in life. Are they, roasting? and people laugh at that, but it's a serious, legitimate question, because in their theism, their theology, there are specific things that are, and there is even technically, and I don't want to get into it now, but it's too long, but there is supposedly an unforgivable sin.
Right.
And it's like, and people, it's like they absorb this kind of through, even if they're so-called, well, I'm not religious, you still hear them use the verbiage. Mm-hmm. It's like they've absorbed the beliefs or the ideas like a spiritual osmosis. And so then when they do have a death in the family, mom passes over, and they're jumping on top of the coffin as they're lowering it into the ground, screaming, and we try to comfort them and say, that is no longer your mother. That is the shell. That is the vessel she expressed through. The who she really was, is, and ever shall be is in a dimension that we can only barely comprehend, even with the 175 years of data that we've tried to amass in this period of time. And so I was, at one time, I had a colleague of mine who was very orthodox. He said, do you tell this to people when you do hospice ministry? I go, yes. And he says, you can't. I said, why can't I? He says, well, it's not. And he started to basically spout off his belief system. I said, I appreciate that it works for you. Wow. But the person I work with, I have to deal with them from their point of view, not yours, and frankly, very often, not even mine. I've got to find a middle path so that I can comfort, encourage, and hopefully bring what everyone wants, the approbation of a peaceful death, so that when they do learn what is beyond, it's not a shock to their spiritual system.
Yes, exactly.
There was a woman, and her name is Susie Smith. And Susie was a character. I had the privilege of meeting her. And back in the day, when there was not any white or gray in this hair, I read a lot of her books. She was a journalist by profession. And the last book she wrote before she passed away was called The Book of James, where supposedly the spirit, small s, of William James came through, and she did it through a contemporary manifestation, automatic typing, not automatic writing. Right. But the end of the book is the most powerful thing for me, because William James came through her and said, I am not giving you these, what he called facts, to dissuade your belief or destroy your faith or anything else. I just want to put it out there so that, basically, I'm of course paraphrasing, so there are no surprises, so that you have as much data, enough information, so that you can, like with any other thing in life, make a mature, rational assessment of what you're experiencing in such a way where we, again, minimize the fear and maximize the faith. And
that's what spiritualism, a big part of spiritualism is to minimize the fear and move into a state of peace about yourself and your own passing and the passings of your loved ones.
Yep.
And also the other events that happen in your life. There's a great deal of synchronicity that occurs.
Yep. And
you can see how you are very helped by the universe. And that spirit loved ones and all spirit team assists you in your life. Yeah. And once you start to live from that perspective, it really helps you to treat other people a different way as well. And
it's we were talking about earlier about angels. Yeah. When I bless a child what many call baptism, what in spiritualism we used to call it consecration and even naming. I always give a 8x10 lithograph of that old German artwork where the guardian angel is following the children over the rickety bridge.
Yeah.
And I remember a 5-year-old girl who was obviously a little older for a child to be baptized. She was thrilled that she had a sense that she was not alone. Well, whether I'm doing it for a 5-year-old child or a 65-year-old person, male or female, is not even the point. But the point is when we give that kind of comfort, when we give that kind of uplift, and that, it's one of the reasons I'm so impressed with the work you do on this broadcast, as well as your personal, professional work, because you got the message. Your primary focus, as I've interpreted your work, has been just what you've talked about, to bring comfort, to uplift consciousness, to help that person not only prepare for what is to come, but also to recognize that there is an infinite amount of support, love, and help. It's not about getting God or Spirit to do it for us or something we can't do for ourselves. It's what we in metaphysics call, it is about accepting and allowing.
Yes.
Always accepting and allowing. And that's why when we teach in religious science, when we teach prayer, we do not, for example, pray in the manner that most people, oh Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes Benz, as Janis Joplin used to sing. No, it's I already have a Mercedes Benz, or whatever it is.
I accept this is mine.
Thank you. I accept, I allow, I know. It's about creating an attitude not only of gratitude, but an attitude of worthiness. And if somebody had to say to me, well, what's your point in everything you've done in spiritualism? That's my point. To give people a sense that God is love, because love is the highest manifestation that we in our three-dimensional humanness can experience and express. That if I take that love and truly embody it in my own self, and then strive to express it to anything and everything that I think, say, and do, I, by the law of attraction, if I may use that expression, draw into my experience that which I am consciously affirming.
Yes.
Celestine prophecy. Don't read the book. No, read the book.
Another book not to read.
It's a good book not to read. No, but the most.
Here's a book. Don't read it.
Here's
a book. Don't read it.
Aren't I a little Dickens? But I'm not Charles Dickens. Anyway, but the most important line out of that entire book, which I can never ever stress enough. Where your intention goes, energy must flow. And the intention of spiritualism as a religion, a philosophy, and a science has always been just what you so beautifully articulated just a couple minutes ago. Encouragement, upliftment, getting people to love themselves by recognizing that those that they love are more infinitely loved than they can in these, quote, 3 dimensions comprehend. And when they do have a subjective, whether it be a near-death experience, I prefer not to be that dramatic if we can avoid it, but any of those things, whether it be in a meditation or in an affirmative prayer, that they have that sense of what Edgar Cayce used to call that still small voice within, the truth of our reality, that we not only prepare for the better life that is to come, but we become better here and now. We become happier, healthier, safer. My God, we need this. Saner and more secure. And so, and if we can express that, going back to our central theme, in those types, couch them in those types of terms, to say, and I've actually said this, and maybe I have a tendency, and our host here will affirm this, I tend to be blunt at times. Not to my credit, by the way.
It's okay.
Anyway, but what I strive to tell people is, I said, your beliefs are yours, and I honor what you choose to believe, but I am not here again to debate anything. I want to share. It's about sharing, because sharing is caring.
But not oversharing.
No. Because again, I use this. It's not the best example. You go to the market and you buy some product and you taste it and go, my God, this is the best thing I've ever tasted in my whole life. And what do? You're on the street corners. You're in the store. You're telling everybody, oh my God, this is amazing. You've got to try this. And some people try to go, what the hey? What are you, nuts? You want to tone it down so that you are, I call it lovingly enthusiastic. Calmly enthusiastic. And when I tell people, I said, people think that, for example, that I rejected spiritualism when I became engaged in, subsequently ordained in religious science. I do more work in spiritualism now than I ever did 30 years ago. And again, not so much mediumistically, but that's because I tend to be very drawn to the intellectual dynamics of this and the philosophical dynamics. So I do a lot of preaching and teaching, and the sum and substance of what I try to tell people, and for the most part, people come back at me and acknowledge it, is, you made me feel better about what I believe. And I go, good. I said, and I go back to, oh my God, my good friend, Reverend Marilyn Autry taught me this when people make the assumption that Andrew Jackson Davis, who is technically the philosophical father of modern spiritualism, that he was, a hardline spiritualist. Yes and no. When he wrote the book, The Harmonial Philosophy, another book you don't want to read. No.
It can be a challenge to get through.
The language is...
And I have had Tom Kratzley as my guest before, and he talked about about Andrew Jackson Davis, so go back and watch that show.
But one last thing with that. Davis said, I am a spiritualist only to the degree that they absorb or acknowledge and can work with my harmonial philosophy. And that's the same thing that we do. We say, look, this is what we have come to in our expression, what we know. You may disagree with me. I respect that. Have a nice day.
I know we have to wrap up in a few minutes,
yes.
But what you just said sparked something in terms of, sometimes people will have an experience, or maybe it's a discussion, or maybe they had a reading or a healing, and then they allow the rational mind to come in and start to pick it all apart. And they've analyzed it to dust, and before you know it, that special spiritual experience, that revelation, that inspiration is gone.
Dust in the wind.
Yes.
Yeah,
so I would encourage you, in your own path, if that's happened to you, think about how you have, what you've done, and what you maybe don't want to attack a conversation with a person in that way.
Exactly.
That these experiences that we have are not necessarily about the rational mind.
And
they're about the spiritual experience.
You bring an you just jogged my memory.
Yeah.
You bring an extraordinary thing to mind. We are seekers after truth. We are seekers after understanding. I can't tell you, I've had people come to me, this is over a number of years, and they'll say, I have experienced talking to Jesus, or I've experienced talking to Mary, the mother of Jesus, or even, take any historical figure. And as a result of this conversation, this spiritual awareness, this dream, this vision, their lives have changed unbelievably.
Because they let them.
Because they let them. They let the wisdom, hopefully, that came through that, the knowledge, the information. And I don't have the right to, nor would I choose to have the right to say, that sounds interesting, but I don't agree with it. I would say, look, I'm amazed. I remember reading that there was a child in so I can't remember which country, I don't think it was the U.S., had a dream about the rock star Boy George coming to them in a dream and being completely healed of a malady. You just saw it. My jaw dropped when I was thinking about it.
I think you're going to be out there.
I don't know what that is. I don't have to know this very minute what that is. All I know is I would say to that person, as if they were relating that to me, my jaw would drop and I go, whoa, that's amazing. We don't have to have a hardcore empirical scientific answer for everything we experience. We are subjective souls. We experience things, we interpret it through myriad filters. The key is to live and let live. Again, not to be judgmental, but to be complementary, so that we can learn from each other. And again, if it were easy, everybody would be doing it. It's not easy. It's challenging, but the rewards, the benefits for our personal spiritual experience, and indeed the experience of those that we come in contact with, are beyond measure, in my opinion.
Beyond measure.
In my opinion.
Absolutely. And it's important to go back to those foundational principles of spiritualism, refresh them in your own mind on a regular, almost daily basis. So that when you are experiencing your life, or you are interacting and wanting to speak spiritualism, not just live spiritualism, but to speak it out. To be
able to articulate it, not in the complexities of it, because there are some extraordinary complexities. Yes. If you doubt that, try to explain apports and table tipping to people sometimes. Don't. There are more, the things that 99% of the populace are interested in are, like I said, my loved ones. How are they doing? Yes. Will I see them again? Or even, and this touches my heart because I'm an animal lover. You know, I just buried my dog. Will I see my dog again? And go, well, you know, funny you should mention that. We do believe very strongly, and I might even, I might have a book or two around, say, here, this is about animal communication. Or if you don't want to read that, let me tell you a couple of my stories. And you just leave it at that. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be a cross between, Elmer Gantry and Attila the Hun about it. You just, gentle, kind, loving, and because recognize what you have within you is yours. Nobody can take that away from you. And you don't have to defend it. You don't have to feel like, well, they're going to laugh at. Let them laugh. Let them scoff. I remember the old thing, I came to scoff, I stayed to believe. And many people who have come to this from a empirical scientific point of view. Professor Robert Hare, chair of the chemistry at the University of Pennsylvania, back in the pioneer days of the movement, came fully prepared to discredit this. Yes. Became its ardent. J.M. Peebles, 100 years old, traveled the world for this movement for many, many years. Same thing. And of course, you mentioned him earlier, Arthur Conan Doyle. By the way, not just the author of Sherlock Holmes, and a medical doctor. He was an ophthalmologist. Scientific mind came forth and said, I thought this was, cow dung. I'm paraphrasing again. Don't you love it? And came and said, no, this is heavenly communication. And the last thing in that regard is sometimes you have to use the vernacular of most of the folks you deal with. Yes. I have no problem with using the word heaven. I have no problem with using this. And the other, one last thing with this, people will come to you because the predominant belief structure in this country is still very much Christianity. I have no problem. I have dear, dear friends I have one friend who is fundamentalist as the day is long. And I love this person very deeply, and they love me. And they know that I do not embody or accept their particular theology. And they will tell me on a number of occasions, I'm still praying for you, and my attitude is, please do, because I'll take all the help I can get. And it's the same thing with so many other people. If I tell them something and say, I had one lady said, that's the biggest crock of I've ever heard in my life. I said, well, come and see me tomorrow. I'll give you a bigger, better crock if you want me to. I'll make stuff up if
Ron
you want
knows
me to.
what to say.
But I said, it's what I experience. And this is also a discipline, a spiritual discipline. We need to spiritually discipline ourselves to follow the religion, if I may use it, of the Dalai Lama. We need kindness. We desperately need kindness. And we need it on so many levels in not just our nation, but throughout the world, because we've got to get it through our heads. This is the only Mother Earth we have. And if we don't learn how to get along, and that's what religion supposedly does for us.
Well, there's the sacred. It's about living in that sacred mindset, and so that's what it is. Something that happens in all religions, that they have that place of we need to be in that sacred mindset and see the world from that viewpoint. And we really need to finish up soon. But last points.
Okay,
how's that?
Very briefly.
We can't stop.
We're just unstoppable. If there was, I forgot the gentleman's name. He's a Japanese physicist, and he kind of looks like a Japanese Albert Einstein. He has long white hair now, and he has a mustache and goatee and all that. But he said, to your point, he said, if we stopped looking at a mountain as something we could, tear apart for the iron ore, and instead view it as a sacred thing, and this goes back to the native peoples, if we started to understand that it's all sacred, and to have a sacred mindset, to walk in a sacred manner, is so much more, in the pragmatic sense, productive than to view everything as something we can, we have to learn, again, in climate change, we have to become stewards, not destroyers. We have to,
And we also have to be stewards of religion, not destroyers of religion. So I would say that spiritualism isn't here to destroy religions. No. Spiritualism is here to expand consciousness and to be able to share that. It really helps people to understand that, yes, the soul continues on as your religion has told you. And look, here's what happens. We get to talk with those people again on occasion and share that love and know that they're okay, and know that ultimately we're going to be okay, and we will live our lives from that spiritual perspective.
And if you ever think that people will reject you for that, the short answer is they might. But most of the time, even if they have a belief system that is totally in opposition to this, again, you've planted a seed because they want to believe this, because on some deep core level, they know that it has validity. Yes. It has credibility, because the data wouldn't.
Because they're like, how? They are reading. How does she know that?
Yeah.
Well, your loved ones in spirit just told me that. Oh my goodness! If they're able to do that, then maybe I do need to revisit or rethink how I.
And that's that's the benefit of the work you do, because the public work is more intellectualized many times. I'm not talking about spirit greetings, but many times you're teaching or preaching or whatever, a lot of intellectual ideas and concepts. But when you do the one-on-one, when you do the counseling, when you do and I'm old school, I call it what it used to be called. It is not spirit greetings, it's spiritual communion. Mm-hmm. And it is for the spiritualist sacramental. It's that's how it's taken.
Yes.
And if we can express that more often in a gentle, loving way, then people will not basically just view what is done under the banner of spiritualism as something crass or materialistic, or and you hear a litany of everything that's happened that's gone wrong. Well, we're here to tell you there's an enormously larger litany of, and which you've reflected beautifully this morning, that has helped myriad peoples and will continue to help myriad peoples if we approach it in such a way that we can, do it in a sensitive, loving manner, not too pushy. And I know sometimes I'm a little bit pushy, but to do it so that you walk away and everybody's thinking and hopefully growing. You said it earlier beautifully. Well, actually, forgive me. I want to say that Buddhism is not a religion. It's a philosophy. They have no dogma nor creed. And there are other faith traditions, and spiritualism, technically, though it's creedless and non-dogmatic, it still expresses as a religious movement. But you can have a variety of other religious beliefs and probably still utilize spiritualism as a wonderful augment.
That's right.
There are
Buddhist spiritualists, Christian spiritualists,
yeah.
Jewish spiritualists.
It does get a little dicey, and that's why dialogue and discussion and coming to some hopefully commonalities is so important. There are some faith traditions that have such a knee-jerk reaction to this that the twain shall never meet. But I'm a cockeyed optimist. I believe if you can be quietly loving and giving and open, you can overcome any boundary, any brick wall, and turn that brick wall. We got too many brick walls. We got to start building a whole lot of bridges. Because the only bridge I know right now is the Rainbow Bridge, and I try to avoid that with my critters. So let's build some more bridges.
Building bridges. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being here
today. Oh,
today.
It's always my pleasure.
It's great to have you on here, Ron.
You're good people.
Thank you. And I appreciate everyone who tuned in today, or people who are watching on the replay. And so like and share and follow, because that really helps. And I know Ron has an event coming up that is being hosted by the Church of the Living Spirit,
yes,
which is next week in anticipation of the new year coming. You want to tell them a little bit about that?
Unaccustomed to public speech as I am, I will try to be brief. On the Friday before New Year's Eve, so it's important you note this, the Friday before Sunday, which is going to be New Year's Eve, we'll be meeting at the Church of the Living Spirit. I believe the time is 7 p.m. for the service to begin. I would encourage you to check their website. I'm having trouble with my computer, so I couldn't check this morning just to be 100% sure. But we're going to have the yearly burning bowl ceremony. There is a principle in metaphysics, an affirmation, if you will, called out of my consciousness, out of my life. It's based on the proposition that you cannot think a positive thought and a negative thought simultaneously. So previous to this service, and even just a little bit beforehand, maybe within that half an hour before the service begins, people take the opportunity to write out on a 3x5, 4x6 sheet of paper all of the things in their life that this past year, 2023, those things that no longer serve them, those things they want to release and no longer have in their lives, again, for their highest good and something better. During the course of the service, we do ceremonially, ritualistically, symbolically light these pieces of paper. There's a bowl with a candle in it. We burn all of these. And again, the symbolism is the purification of flame, the purification of fire. It is a symbolism of releasing that. And it is a very emotionally and spiritually cathartic thing that we do. I've done this for so many years, I've lost count. I've been very privileged that they've invited me back year after year, and I've done it in other churches that I serve.
Well, he's good at it. He's really good at it. And we've had him on the show before. I think a few years back, we talked about, very specifically, about the burning bowl.
Yeah.
So you could go back in the archive videos for that.
Yeah, please. I would encourage it.
And then, if you're able to be in person for it, it really is a beautiful experience to let go of things you need to let go of and to invite into your life.
To use the law of attraction by using what we call
law.
Yep, the law of mind. To live intentionally, to recognize that whatever has been can be released. You are not bound by precedent. You are not defined by your past. There is only one time, and that is the eternal now. And to take that and solidify that in your consciousness and make it a tangible, because that's important. That's how some people learn. If it's not on paper, it doesn't exist for them. And symbolically, this is not what I call wishcraft or magical thinking. This is a ritual or a ceremony that helps us to in consciousness release that which no longer serves. And then we spend a small period of meditation to ask Spirit to draw into our experience, into our expression, all of that which is for our highest good, and as they say in the Unity movement, and something better. Marianne Williamson, I believe, added the and something better, because that gives Spirit in its totality and its infinite wisdom that we are not always consciously privy to, the opportunity to, by the law of attraction, to give us infinitely more than we in our purported limited self could ask for.
So you get extra.
Yeah, it's a twofer. It's as my father, a bonus.
So yes, that's hosted by the Church of Living Spirit, which is at the Assembly Hall.
Assembly Hall.
I want to say that's the 27th, isn't it?
No, 28th.
28th?
Or wait a minute, forgive me. Wait a minute, 28th.
I could go look at the calendar over there.
Wait, it's got to be the 29th, because Saturday is the 30th and New Year's Eve is the 31st, which is Sunday. So it's June 29th. I got to have more coffee. It'll be December 29th, Friday. I do believe it's at 7, but I strongly encourage, check the time. It's in the evening, so please, be cautious in your driving. I do believe it'll also be on Facebook, but as Willa said, if you can get there safely, please come attend.
It's a very nice ceremony. It could go a couple hours. I've been at it when it's...
We are usually there. The way we've been doing it, because there was a time where we did not include spirit greetings, but that was reinvested last year. And I must say, without any fear of self-contradiction, last year was probably... I don't want to say it was the most meaningful burning ball we've had there to date, but gosh darn close. It was really, really uplifting. I don't want to say not a dry eye in the house, but it was getting there. People were coming in touch, and that's what it's all about: relationship, coming in touch with the spirit within, and then being able to share that in a communal what they call a corporate manner. I don't know why.
No, I would say in fellowship.
In fellowship, perfect.
This is very good. Fellowship. So yes, there's that event. Thank you so much for sharing about that and for doing that event every year. It's really wonderful. Honored beyond measure. It's that old expression. I get way more out of it than I give, and I'm so grateful because it gives me a chance to reconnect with my roots. It gives me a chance to, one of the. I call it the pitfalls of being as spiritually fluid as I tend to be, is I deal with a lot of different people, and sometimes the faith traditions are not always as friendly as I'd like them to be in when they listen to some of my explanations. But on the other hand, I believe I am led of Spirit to do what I do, and pray I do it with some, hopefully some style, but mostly with a lot of grace, I hope. And humor. Yes. Always. If you can't laugh, I've always said God has an amazing sense of humor, and I am a living example of that. There you go. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in today for How to Speak Spiritualism. This will at least get you started in thinking about the energy you want to bring to that sort of conversation. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and wishing you all a beautiful holiday and New Year. Bye-bye.